Moxley goes into the ring,
Mm-hmm.
and then he leaves or is about to leave, and then he comes back in to talk to Tony Schiavone, and he says, it's going to take some time for everybody to wrap their brains around this. It's going to start now. This is not your company anymore. And he's saying this to Tony Schiavone. Now, why is he saying it to Tony Schiavone? Does he maybe know that maybe like that Tony Khan is in Tony Schiavone's ear? What did you make of that? Because it kind of left everybody confused, which Tommy could be a good way to start the show or a weird way to start your show, because I think there was just mass confusion on exactly what Moxley was saying, but even more importantly, who he was saying it to.
Well, exactly what he said. It's going to take a while for you to get your brain to get wrapped around this, right? Said something to that effect.
Yep.
So that's exactly what you're doing, David. You're trying to get your brain wrapped around this. You're trying to understand it. It's it's dropping a little hint. There's so many times. I think if you ever get either a text or a talk with Via Ledge, like, hey, I got to talk to you about something later. You're like, wait, what? No, let's talk about it right now, because you have to speculate. Is everything okay? For this, and you said he came out to a different song. I feel this is a different character that we're about to see with him. And then we saw something later where this is a new thing for him, where I believe that was Marina Shafir.
Yeah, it was Marina Shafir there.
Who looked great, took out a bunch of people. She's a real amateur wrestler. She's been doing excellent, but I mean, a new look. I'm saying she's been doing excellent. I've seen her doing stuff on, it was Sami Callihan's Pro Wrestling Revolver, where I saw a different side of her. And so there's something brewing with this guy. And in pro wrestling, when we say it's a tease or there's something changed, right away the internet explodes with Shane McMahon. And they start reminding me that they're sending me pictures of Shane and Jon Moxley when he was Dean Ambrose in WWE. Who knows where they're going? But exactly what the guy said happened, as well as gets you speculating, which I don't mind that, because Dave, at the end of the show, I'm going to talk to you about something. Well, why don't we talk about it right now? Because I don't want to talk about it right now, Dave. You're going to think about that. Or, Dave, can I talk to you after the show in private? Whoa, wait a minute. So these are things like, and again, when, in my opinion, when we don't get what we want, that instant gratification, it's speculation is great for pro wrestling because it's an
absolutely
episodic.
I think you're 100% right, Tommy.
I'm not saying you. I'm just saying, like, yes, like normally I would have either liked to, seen Mercedes Moné have her celebration, Mariah May, but this was just something different to get you hooked, and I feel get you hooked into the show.
That's the question. Would it have, because what you're saying is 100% right. If Violetta texts me and says, you know what, Dave, I have something important to talk to you. Now I'm like, all right, what does she have to say? And now I have anxiety. What is going on here? So the rest of the show, I'm going to kind of zone out because I'm going to be like, all right, what is she talking about? I think a lot of that has to do here because I think throughout the entire 2 hours, fans were speculating about what Jon Moxley was talking about. So would it have been better to start with Bryan Danielson last night and then end with Jon Moxley, where you end with that question and now we're speculating for an entire week of what Jon Moxley had to say to start off Dynamite? Would it have been better was it the right position to start with it, or should they have ended with that question?
Yeah, hey, listen, that's a good point, counterpoint. I look at like, hey, who am I gonna, an unadvertised showing up to end my show after a really, really good wrestling match. You also have to think of end result. We kind of had back-to-back like babyface attacks where Ospreay got attacked by Pac, Bryan Danielson got attacked by Jack Perry. You could definitely open up with that Bryan Danielson promo, but then if you're looking at a piece of paper that says Bryan Danielson in the beginning and question mark because it's unadvertised at the end, and then don't you feel if they ended the show, people would be like, oh, that was so flat, or that like that's how we go off the air? We don't have that instant gratification because he's literally ending with a word. And I also do like the commentators. Also, I thought the commentators did a great job at All In, by the way. We have the commentators speculating and reacting to something that they saw the segment after, which I did enjoy that too, because it's not like we just saw someone get crushed by a car. Let's talk about the weather. Like, hey man, what was he talking about? I don't know. He's looking right in my eyes and like he just seemed different. So I feel it's a character rebuild. It again, if, and this goes to what, Bully always says, if you had the pencil, are you going to look at how am I going to keep my viewers? My new world champion is going to talk and address his future. That was a big part of that 50,000 plus. And now if he's going to stay or if he's going to leave, or is it a question marks? And by question marks, yes, Jon Moxley can definitely close a show, but where's at all payoff? I think there would have been so much more ramifications if they went off the air because people are like, wait, what? Because it would have been flat.
The speculation has started already. Obviously, right. Everybody last night tweeting pictures, as you said, of Shane McMahon and Jon Moxley. I got my theory of what I think is happening. Do you have any guesses for where you think this is going?
I found it interesting when Bryan Danielson lost that Moxley was not there. I found it interesting that like end shot or with his wife, with his kids, and with like Claudio, Wheeler Yuta, and he's part of a group. And then I also when I no longer believe in things happen for a reason, like, or that just happenstance. Then all of a sudden it's like Jon Moxley was not in the UK. He was at Pro Wrestling Revolver backstage. And I'm like, that's weird. That's a weird thing that's making the rounds. And then I see this and I'm like, I don't want to say angle alert, but I'm like, something's a brewing, and then something brewed. So again, but I also I buy into stuff like that in the sense of, from a creative standpoint, I don't mind it. Where there are legit leaks, and then there's also planned leaks. And then when you see it catch fire on social media, it's like, I got you. I hooked you.
Well, of course. I mean, when he says, hey, it's not your company anymore, the question is, all right, well, whose company is it and why? So like I said, let the speculation begin. What are some of the fans' theories of what Jon Moxley meant by what he said to Tony Schiavone last night?
If you also remember the Outsiders, right? Remember when they came and they were like, there's a third guy. And you're like, wait, what? And that was built for a long, long time. And that's speculation, but like, we're not alone. And you're like, wait, but these are the two biggest guys in the industry at this point. There's somebody else. And that was a long, long time. I also look at it, how I look at this, he's going to start his own chaos. Because he's kind of like, what was Seth Rollins, the anarchist? I feel he's in the burn it down. I think Moxley could also go that character of he's a wild child.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm interested. That question, it's got to be big, because the last time they had a really long-term story that went on a long time was who's behind the Devil's Mask. And unfortunately, because of circumstance, that flopped big time, and it was a huge bomb because of what happened with Adam Cole, what happened with MJF. If you're going to do something like this, Tommy, it's got to be big. It can't be just something like, all right, there's a new faction, like you said, called Chaos with, Jon Moxley, Marina Shafir, and some other person on the roster. Like, when you do this to start off your biggest Dynamite, coming off your biggest show of the year, and this is how you start it, it's got to be something huge, because if it's not, it's going to be a major disappointment for your fan base. So I'm going to
let me ask you this. I agree. Would you be happy if it was a talent?
If it was like, when you say a talent, is it a talent that's already on the roster?
Bobby Lashley and Kevin Owens.
Well, it'd have to make sense. And that's another thing. They gave you another plot line with Marina Shafir. So now it's like, it's obviously going in some kind of direction with Moxley and Marina Shafir.
Yes. But if they're like MMA type of people coming in, so let's just say then it's Bobby Lashley, and they're going to wreak havoc. And I'm just, again, speculating, like, because everyone's like Shane McMahon. Then I'm like, well, I read or reading that Kevin Owens' contract's coming up. If it was Kevin Owens, do you think that would be a landscape changer?
I think that would be huge. But it's also, there's a big difference between, like, we're going to dominate AEW to where he says, this is not your company anymore. Because as soon as you say something like that, you start looking at the ownership level of AEW. And since we all know about the conversation between Shane and Tony Khan, you can understand why people's minds are going in that direction.
What if it was Shane?
That's huge.
Yep.
That's huge.
What if it's, for now, Bobby Lashley, and it's not your company anymore, is like, we're going to destroy everybody and take all the titles?
It depends on who the players are. Bobby Lashley, I don't know. I'm a little lukewarm to it.
Wow. Former world champion.
Yeah.
And then also think
I
about...
love Bobby Lashley, but, he wasn't exactly tearing it up near the end of his WWE run. So, and it's also another former WWE wrestler that's coming into AEW.
Yeah, that don't bother me. Look at the acceptance of a Ricochet. Again, just throwing all these different speculations out there, what it could be. Think of it. Think of this quote: "We're taking over." It's the same thing. I don't think we went, like, they came in as outsiders that are going to burn the company within and take it over. I think in
right, but it's Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley's not an outsider. Marina Shafir's not an outsider.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, just when you say you're taking over, could mean we're going to dominate the men and the women's division. There was
we're taking over. He says it's not your company anymore. It is not your company anymore.